here. First, I will start with giving you a brief overview of the Atlantis architecture. After that, we'll get into all the new features and functions we have delivered with USX 3.0. And then Tushar will wrap it up with an update on hyperscale, our hyper-converged appliance. So at Atlantis, we have two distinct yet related offerings. On the left-hand side, you see Atlantis USX, which is our software-defined storage offering. USX can virtualize any hardware that you may have in your data center, or can help you come up with your own software-defined storage solution and bring benefits such as performance acceleration and capacity savings to your data center. Then we take all the goodness of USX and then wrap it and package it up in an appliance, what we call as hyperscale. Atlantis Hyperscale is an all-flash hyper-converged appliance, meaning that it delivers sub-millisecond latencies consistently. It really, once it arrives at your site, you can start getting value out of it in less than 20 minutes. Everything is pre-packaged and pre-installed. And true to its form, we at Atlantis do not want you to be locked into any hardware vendor solution. And so we offer currently choice of 4 hardware vendors, and we are working on adding more to that list. So let's get going on a brief overview on the USX architecture. The first layer of the USX architecture is obviously all the storage devices that you may have in your data center. When I say storage devices, I mean anything including memory, for example, that may reside on your servers, local attached storage that may be there in your servers, and could be hard drives or SSDs, or even shared storage, your SAN or NAS legacy systems. What USX does as a first step is it virtualizes all these things. Once it virtualizes these resources, then it brings its value, the value being the Atlantis file system. Now, Atlantis file systems really does 3 things. Number one, it brings inline deduplication and compression to your storage infrastructure. Inline deduplication, a little bit on that. At Atlantis, our inline deduplication file system is really granular at 4K blocks. That means every single write block that comes to us, we chunk it in 4K, and then we create hashes for every single 4K blocks. We compare them to existing hashes, and only the ones that are unique we end up writing to the back end. Now, all of this sounds like a lot. However, remember that every single one of the steps is actually done completely in line once and forever. That brings you, over 50 to 70% capacity savings right up front the moment you introduce USX in your infrastructure. The second thing that USX does is performance acceleration. So many people who I talk to consider deduplication as merely a capacity-saving tool. It is not. It's actually a performance acceleration tool as well. Consider that if your hosts are doing, let's say, 100 write IOs, and USX is able to deduplicate 80% or 70% of them, then the back-end IOs that are happening are reduced by 30%. And that is huge when it comes to improving performance. Well, in addition to deduplication, USX also does caching and coalescing. With our in-memory deduplication engines, we are able to cache the recently read data in our caches, and that way, once a read request comes looking for any block, we are able to service those blocks right from our memory. And then finally, USX allows you to integrate all of your storage. So I already talked about virtualization. We can virtualize any storage, including fiber channel storage. But then when we export it in either NFS format or iSCSI format. So those are the basically only two formats that we expose all our underlying stories, regardless of where they are coming from. On top of this file system, the Dedupe file system, we offer, data services that are, kind of quite near and dear to every storage administrator. Things like resiliency. We have the capability to handle any kinds of failure, including drive node or volume level failure. All kinds of data protection. For example, with asynchronous replication that we offer now with 3.0, you can protect your primary environment at a different data center. We also brought snapshots with Atlantis USX 3.0 that I'll be talking about. Capability to do cloning or replication or teleport, which is an interesting concept wherein you can migrate a virtual machine from one place to another, and that migration obviously is built on top of USX Dedupe file system, and so it is Dedupe aware. Think of a 50 gig VM. Before USX, when you migrate or do a vMotion of that 50 gig VM, all of that data gets migrated. With USX though, what we are able to do is to look at that 50 gig VM, calculate hashes for every 4K block, compare those hashes with the target hashes that are already there on the target side, and then migrate only the unique hashes that is there in that VM. We have done this demos and experiments several times, and we are typically able to see like migrating a 100 gig VM takes under 20 seconds. Typically, without USX, it would take over 5 minutes. So on top of all these data services, we clearly are paying a lot of attention to management, how to make life easier for our storage administrators. Consider, if you have played with USX volumes, you would realize that essentially, when you create a volume, a lot of the SLAs are already defined as part of the creation of that volume, such as performance. You choose a volume type like all flash, and you get the performance you need. Availability is inherent. You create a resilient volume type, you get a resiliency automatically on that. And then all you are doing at the time of creation of a volume type is essentially specifying the capacity of that volume. They are very rich REST API interface. In fact, every single thing that we do is driven by an underlying REST API. And then finally, we are also delivering with Atlantis USX 3.0 a capability called Insight that I'll be talking to you about just in a few minutes. So if I were to summarize all of that from an end user standpoint, when you're using USX, you literally are just making two choices, two decisions. What are the storage resources you have that you are willing to let USX consume? It could be memory or within the server or outside of the server in terms of SAN or NAS storage. And then the second choice that you make is how big you want your volume to be. Beyond those two choices, everything USX just does for you. Let me focus a little bit more on the deduplication capability. Deduplication has been there in the industry for quite some time. There are different approaches. There are post-process deduplication approaches. There are deduplication approaches that happen within a storage system. For example, once it hits storage cache. Atlantis deduplication happens much before any I/O makes it to storage layer. It happens right at the server layer, right in the memory. We actually, all of our metadata is actually resident in the server-side memory. We obviously make copies of that metadata. If it's a unique write or a duplicate write, depending on what it is, we either update the underlying persistent media or update just the metadata to the underlying persistent media, ensuring the complete protection against any power outage or failure of any kind at any level. But all of this is done at the server layer in memory, and that is where a lot of performance acceleration comes with USX. So at USX, with USX, they've been delivering what I say consistent, meaningful innovation almost every 3 to 6 months. And USX 3.0 is just the latest installment of Atlantis innovation that we are delivering. We are delivering quite a bit, but I would like to focus our talk today on basically 4 things: the VMware VVOL certification, Smart Snaps, which is our snapshot capability, remote replication, and Atlantis Insight, which you can think of that as a call home capability, but it is much more than that, and I'll talk about that. Let's look at USX 3.0 VMware VVOL certification. USX in Atlantis Hyperscale are basically industry's first hyper-converged and software-defined storage offerings to support VMware VVOLs. Those of you who have been keeping track, VMware has been working on virtual volumes for a long time, over 3 years. And Atlantis has been working with VMware every step of the way to make sure that when they go GA, we go GA very shortly thereafter. Our VASA provider, which is a key component in VVOL support, is actually integrated within our USX manager. What that means to US customers is that you don't have to install VASA provider at all. It is pre-installed. And because it is installed in USX manager, and you can have multiple USX managers running your USX deployment, it also inherits the resiliency of the USX manager. If a USX manager fails over to another USX manager, the VASA provider fails over as well. Another interesting thing with our VVOL support is that if you have SAN storage right now in your environment, SAN or NAS storage of any kind that does not support VMware VVOL, and you would like to take advantage of VMware VVOL, USX can help you get that advantage, because once we virtualize all of these storage systems, we bring VVOL capability to all of these storage systems. And there are actually, if you look at it, there are actually a number of storage systems right now that are not VVOL certified. Most systems from EMC are not certified. Most of the all-flash arrays are not VVOL certified. And with USX, you can bring VVOL certification to all of your storage infrastructure. Now, why does VVOL certification or VVOL capability matter? Well, one of the things that happens when a storage is VVOL capable is all the actions that you do at the vSphere level. Think of making a clone of a VM, or think of doing a snapshot for a VM. All of those actions prior to, or even vMotion, for example, prior to VVOL certification, unless you have some specific VAI integration, those actions are done by the host, by the ESX host themselves. And they are not DDoS aware. And so, if we were to do a cloning of a 50 gig VM, they will actually go and do the cloning. With USX VVOL enablement, that operation, or in fact those operations, cloning, snapshots or vMotion, all of those operations are offloaded to USX. And because USX is smart and intelligent and is DDoS aware, we make intelligent calls to ensure that a 50 gig VM is not really being cloned on the back end. We literally just do pointer manipulation when we're doing a cloning operation that got offloaded to us by vSphere. So there are a number of advantages if your storage infrastructure is VVOL aware and if you're using vSphere. Let's talk about some of these advantages in the context of data services. So the first one being snapshots. Now, snapshots have been in the industry for quite a while. And so when we started looking at how to design the best snapshot in the industry, we looked at the landscape, and we looked at what are the typical problems that customers have with snapshots. Some of the things that we saw was, some legacy implementations have copy on write or copy on first write snapshots, and they tend to be slow. They tend to eat up a lot of CPU cycles. So we try to ensure that our snapshots are fast, and I'll talk about how we did that. A number of implementations in the industry offer snapshots at either a volume level or at a VM level. And we thought, why couldn't we do both? And so our snapshots are actually, both volume and VM aware. Our snapshots, you can just literally take them with a single click. So that's really, really flexible and easy to use. Finally, our snapshots are efficient, of course, because our snapshots are deduplication aware. What does that mean? Let me walk you through what happens when a snapshot is taken. So imagine a scenario where you have a volume and you take a snapshot at time t1. We internally just take a mental note, we just do some metadata tracking and state that, okay, a snapshot has been taken for these blocks, and we'd make a copy of the metadata, obviously, right? After that, let's say a unique write comes. Now, because the write is unique, we do have to write it to the backend. However, we don't write it to existing blocks. In other words, we do not update existing blocks. What we do is we just write it at a separate place, something we call it snapshot space. And that way, we avoid the dreaded read, modify, write sequence, which is bad for performance. Now, this is a typical redirect on write implementation. The Atlantis advantage comes because of our dedupe file system. Imagine that your hosts are doing writes, and a lot of them are duplicate writes. In our file system, we capture those duplicate writes, and obviously because they are duplicates, we don't have to actually write anything to the back end. So we don't have to really consume your snapshot space because of our deduplication file system. All we end up doing is we end up updating metadata. We update reference counts, etc., to make sure that we know how a particular block has been referenced by hosts so many times and all that. And that's about it. After we update metadata, once you take that snapshot again, you're not really consuming any space. All you're doing is creating another snapshot of that particular state. And so if you just sort of think about it, with a dedupe-aware snapshot, we're able to save capacity, number one. Number two, it's really fast because we don't have to write anything. We avoid writes on the back end. And we are able to, as I will talk to you in just a moment, we are able to bring this dedupe awareness to your hypervisors as well with the integration of things like VVOL. A couple of things on ease of uses and flexibility. You can take a snapshot at any point in time. You can obviously also schedule a snapshot. You can say for a particular volume, take a snapshot every 4 hours or every day, and you can specify all of that. And then once you've taken snapshots, you have the ability to export any of the snapshots that you'd like to export or mount, basically. All our snapshots can be exported as read-only, and you can always roll back your volume to a particular snapshot in the tree, which is when, from a technical standpoint, those snapshots then get mounted as a read-write because you're mounting, you're rolling your volume back to that particular snapshot. Let's talk about how this integrates very well with VVOL, for example. So we were doing this experiment live at VMworld, right now at San Francisco, and we were basically taking a 50-gig VM. We're trying to do a snapshot of that VM from vCenter, and without USX, it would take anywhere just over 5 minutes, and with USX and VVOL enablement there, it would take just under 15 seconds. And the magic, of course, is the moment you click snapshot command in vCenter, that gets offloaded to us, and we just do pointer manipulation and give you the snapshot. And then the same thing happens for cloning as well, by the way. That example that I gave for was cloning. So snapshot would be instantaneous. A 50-gig VM cloning would take under 15 seconds. So that's pretty interesting from a, if you're a vSphere user, it's pretty interesting. You can let your vCenter administrators take their snapshots on their own time interval, and be assured that they're all G2 aware, not consuming space, and are fast. If I were to sort of put our snapshot technology on a competitive landscape, you see, things such as performance. Traditional storage still does copy on write or copy on first write. Most of the new implementations do redirect on write. Some of the new ones offer VM level snapshot. The traditional ones offer volume level snapshot. And then most snapshot right now is not G2 aware, and so they are inefficient and slow. Atlantis USX kind of brings the best of all three worlds here together by offering performance sensitive redirect on write snapshots that is fast and efficient and has the flexibility to do volume and VM level snapshots. Let's move on to another data service that we delivered with USX 3.0, remote replication capability. So with remote replication capability, we are enabling our users, our customers, to basically take a protected copy of their primary data center, primary volumes at a remote site. We do not have any distance limitations, so you can literally put your data center, your backup data center anywhere, and you can use it for multiple purposes. I mean, we are just going to make a copy at a predefined interval, and it's an asynchronous replication, so it does not impact your primary performance because we do it asynchronously. And one of the really neat things that with asynchronous replication is you can now replicate from any storage device to any other storage device. For example, let's say you have EMC in your primary data center and NetApp in your secondary data center. Traditional replication technologies do not allow you to replicate from one to another, but if you were to use USX on top of both of them, you can now use any spare capacity you might have on your secondary data center to make replication copies of your primary data center. So that's pretty neat, and the customers that I talked to at VMworld were pretty excited about that. One of the other things about remote replication is that our remote replication capability is really diff aware. So clearly when you're doing an initial sync, we will send your entire copy of the volume over to the secondary site. But once that initial sync is done, for every other sync interval, we take a snapshot, but then we don't send that entire snapshot. We take a diff of the new snapshot with the previous snapshot, and we only send that diff out, right? And that is quite efficient on the wire because we are only sending the diff, and it's also performance efficient because it doesn't take as much time as it would take if we were to send an entire snapshot over every time. From a management and ease of usage standpoint, you can literally enable replication with a few clicks. All you're doing is you're creating a schedule on a volume. You can say hourly, a couple of hours, weekdays, weeks, whatever you want. You can create a schedule very, very quickly, and then Atlantis will make sure that replication happens at your predefined interval. So this brings me to the final major capability we delivered with USX 3.0 called Atlantis Insight. Now, I refer to Insight as our call home capability. It is actually much more than that. Using Insight infrastructure, we are able to deliver all our software updates to you, just like, think of it as like your Windows updates. It will be pre-staged. It will show up in your UI, and you can see that an update is ready to download and install, and when you click yes, then it basically downloads and installs and upgrades your infrastructure. So that's pretty nice. And then beyond that, we also have the capability to alert us of anything that's going on your side. So if there's any kind of failure, we get alerted. All logs can be sent or do get sent to us. We are also working on expanding our insight infrastructure capability by adding things like having deployment statistics and analytics. Our vision is that we are able to detect proactively an impending failure that might happen in your infrastructure, and we are able to take action on those impending failure before those failures even happen. And we are working on developing analytics capabilities to deliver them. So I know a quick overview on all the USX 3.0 capabilities. With that, let me pass over to my colleague Tushar to give you an update on hyperscale, and we'll have time for Q&A after that. Thank you. Tushar.
Great. Thanks, PD. Hi, everyone. I'm Tushar. I'm the product marketing manager for Atlantis Hyperscale. And I'm going to take a few minutes now to kind of really show you how hyperscale is a truly differentiated product, especially in the appliance hyper-converged category, offering you all-flash performance with hyper-converged simplicity at half the cost of alternatives. So let's get started. As you look at, you've sort of heard the entire USX story, and the power of USX is to really look at and virtualize all of your existing storage, right? But what we have heard from our customers and what's really happening out there in the market is there is a group that values the power and flexibility of USX. But then there is a group of customers that are really looking to get the power of USX prepackaged as an appliance that they can get deployed in their infrastructure in a matter of minutes. And that's what hyperscale does. Hyperscale is a prepackaged, tightly defined, hyper-converged solution that leverages all of the capabilities and power of Atlantis USX technology and delivers our customer a 20-minute time to value to get usable compute and storage. As you look at some of the key aspects of Atlantis Hyperscale, the first thing you would notice is that Atlantis Hyperscale is all flash. And what that does is that it allows all of your applications, be it databases, be it server virtualization, be it a VDI deployment, or be it a business processing, business warehousing, any kind of workload, you always get all flash performance. And the reason that we are able to deliver that to a massive, customer base is to really, a credit to the deduplication and compression technology that PD outlined just a few minutes ago. And what that does is that allows us to maximize the value that you can derive in terms of capacity and performance out of the solid-state flash that we have in the appliance to deliver you tremendous amount of capacity and tremendous amount of performance from a very small actual physical hardware. And when you look at that and the power of that performance and capacity, you really see Atlantis Hyperscale offering 50 to 90% lower cost than hybrid alternatives. And that's so powerful. It's really sort of changing the game, and I'll sort of show you some of the tremendous amount of momentum and reception that we have from the analysts and the press community around it that really sort of nail in the fact of how differentiated this product is. In addition to the performance and cost savings and the space efficiency, we also decided from a model perspective for Atlantis Hyperscale to offer a tremendous amount of choice. And so what Hyperscale does is it follows the path of minimum friction for customers and for our partners in terms of allowing them to choose and deploy the power of Hyperscale on the hardware of their choice. So we support today hardware from HP, Cisco, Lenovo, and Supermicro. And so if you are an HP customer, you can get the power of USX prepackaged and delivered to you on an HP appliance. In addition to that, Hyperscale offers our customers the ability to scale modularly. And so what you can do now is against a traditional storage array, which has in most circumstances scalability limitations, is add appliances as your storage or compute needs grow, and do that seamlessly without any kind of a disruption to your existing workload. Let me now sort of give you a really quick sense of how Atlantis Hyperscale, in combination with the USX technology, really differentiates itself and shines when compared to other hyper-converged alternatives. As PD expanded on, Atlantis Hyperscale and USX have inline, in-memory deduplication technology, which eliminate any duplicate writes to the storage medium. And so what you're able to do with that is really expose a lot more actual capacity to your applications than what any of the other hyper-converged vendors can do. The other differentiating aspect is that Atlantis Hyperscale deduplication technology is completely software-defined. And what that allows you to do is to eliminate any kind of a proprietary hardware dependency that you may have with some of the other vendors that are claiming to have deduplication capability as well. In addition to that, since the deduplication is done in memory, it's extremely fast, and it reduces the amount of latency that you would see with, say, a physical hardware card that's associated with a PCIe slot. In case of some of the other hyperconverged vendors, there is actually no deduplication. And what that makes you, from a customer perspective, the impact of that is the tremendous amount of capacity that you need to buy, which then gets cut into half because of the way they do their HA, which is basically creating 2 copies of all of the data. So as you look at the competitive landscape, the power of Atlantis USX data reduction technology really helps Atlantis Hyperscale shine in terms of the performance, capacity, and cost reductions that we can deliver for our customers. Let me give you a sense of what the performance from Hyperscale looks like right out of the box. So this is an iometer run, and it's using 4K blocks with 50% read, 50% write profile. 80% of those blocks are random. And you see right out of the box, Atlantis Hyperscale delivers 160,000 IOPS at less than a millisecond latency. And that's really powerful because this is all prepackaged and delivered to you with a simple 20-minute time to value that you can deploy and get this performance right out of the box. From a VDI perspective, we have a login VSI approved Zen desktop reference architecture published. We also have one on the Horizon View for those who are interested. We were able to run 600 desktops on a single hyperscale appliance with excellent latency, with just really low latency and response times. And these were pretty large. Knowledge Worker has login VSI cost them about 2 vCPUs, 4 GB of RAM, and 50 GB of hard disk. And that's a pretty significant amount of desktop capability. And those were running on the hyperscale appliances with excellent performance, excellent response times. So that kind of gives you a sense of what the performance looks like when you have an all-flash backed with the data reduction and the deduplication technology that Atlantis Hyperscale brings. In addition to that, we also have a very detailed cost comparison tool that can demonstrate to you an apples-to-apples comparison of the overall appliance cost when compared to the other hyperconverged vendors out there. This is a completely selectable tool that you can go in and select who do you want to compare with, and gives you all the details around what are the hardware, software, and support aspects that were considered and counted in when we were doing this comparison. If you hover one of the server images onto this tool, the link for the tool is right below the image. You can see how the technology we have has really enabled us to disrupt this market in terms of cost, performance, and capacity. Simple management. As I said, Atlantis Hyperscale is simple everywhere. Not only is it simple to deploy, not only is it frictionless to purchase and buy because you get the vendor you want it on, but it's also extremely simple to manage with simple, display and simple capability to manage your volumes, apply the storage functions on them, and essentially, make your storage management, basically a snap. As I also look at what PD just announced with USX 3.0, Hyperscale 3.0 release brings in all of the features around cloning, snapshot, VVOL integration with ESX 6.0, and Atlantis Insight. And what that does is it sort of maximizes and multiplies the benefit of deduplication technology beyond just capacity savings, but to also the data services that you would expect in a normal storage array. So snapshot, cloning, everything is now dedupe aware, and everything is super fast and super efficient. In addition to all of the performance capacity benefits, Atlantis Hyperscale comes with a single point of support from a customer perspective. Atlantis takes your first call on the entire appliance, period. If you have any issues with Atlantis Hyperscale, every Hyperscale appliance is shipped with 3-year, 24/7, 4-hour on-site response support. And any issue you have with the appliance is tackled right by Atlantis, right through the end of the resolution of the problem. And that's really powerful. Let me now sort of share with you, we announced this product in May 2015, and since launch, we've seen, as I said before, a tremendous amount of momentum and industry mindshare with Atlantis Hyperscale. Within a few months from launch, Atlantis Hyperscale was featured in the Magic Quadrant for Integrated Systems, and Gartner had a very, very positive commentary about the product. If you read the paragraph that I posted here, Atlantis Hyperscale is really, based out of a strong customer base that Atlantis has built over time and is a really reliable option. If you look at IDC calls Atlantis Hyperscale as, pretty much disrupting a disruptive market. And that's a pretty bold statement from IDC, and I think we completely agree with that, because what we've delivered here is really a tremendous amount of performance, tremendous amount of capacity at really low pricing. At VMworld, we got the chance to really interact with over 1,000 customers and received extremely positive response. In addition to that, we briefed some of the very top press analysts, and as an outcome of that, you can see the amount of attention that Atlantis is gaining out there in the market is significantly improving with this, a couple of articles that got published in the Register around how Atlantis is really shaping up in future to be a really strong force in the entire data center space. And you can see with the deduplication technology we have, a combination of that with something like a non-volatile memory option creates tremendous possibilities in terms of what you could do with performance and capacity out there in the future. So not only is Atlantis poised to disrupt the market today, but with the technology we have the ability to sort of continue to be at the leading edge of performance and capacity from a storage perspective for a long time to come. In addition to that, I also want to kind of take this opportunity to invite you all for what we are kicking off, as Hyperscale Drive series of events, which are, race-themed events for our partners and customers, for them to come in and, really join us in having an afternoon of fun and learning together with, some really interesting incentives and actions sort of packed in together. This is going to be in the month of October, and we're going to be sending out invites to our prospects and customers really soon. So be on the lookout for that, and we will love to sort of see you. Interestingly, for those who really participate and actually win, we beat a certain set of actions, or be it the Hyperscale Drive racing event on the day, will be going to the Atlantis Cup. which is the ultimate driving experience. Again, scheduled to happen sometime later this year or maybe early next, as as a special award and a special reward for customers who really come in and participate with us in Hyperscale Drive series of events. So be on the lookout for this. This should start to go out pretty much in a week's time. And we're really super excited about this. We really look forward to seeing you there and really kind of sharing with you how Atlantis Hyperscale can really make your data center super fast and efficient. I believe that's all I had for today. So with that, I believe we can turn it over to the questions or any other comments you have for us.
Thank you, Tushar. So one of the questions that's coming is, what are plans to add more hardware vendors to our hyperscale offering?
Great question, PD. So as I said, the model we've adopted is really flexible in terms of us having the ability to go in and add other hardware vendors. We are constantly evaluating other vendors and can add them really quickly. We're currently considering one of the two major server vendors, and we should be in a position to announce something shortly hereafter.
Great. Thank you. All right. Natalie, over to you at this time.
I do see a question here. So the question is, will you consider offering a version of the hyperscale with HP's new converged system 250HC? So that's an interesting question. If you look at the HP's converged system 250HC, that's really a combination of HP's SL2500, or what's now called the Apollo server, with the HP Store Virtual software. And when we evaluated the hardware platforms, our goal was to look for a platform that had the maximum supportability from a lifecycle perspective, from a pricing perspective, and that inevitably was HP's flagship 1U, 1-node platform, the DL360 Gen 9. Being from HP myself previously, I understand the importance of aligning behind a platform, both from a customer perspective and from a partner perspective, a platform that is probably the #1 and #2 seller in the world. And that's why we chose the DL360 Gen 9, is because that's the platform that can be offered by HP at potentially the most aggressive prices and has the longest life cycle of support for options. So we have thereby decided to go with the DL360 Gen 9. However, the platform that's been chosen by HP for the 250HC is always under the consideration, and we would definitely be looking at it as we move forward into the portfolio with respect to processor refreshes, and that would be a good time for us to kind of reevaluate and see if it makes sense for us to go with something like the platform used for the 250HC. I see another question here about GPU support. So we've looked at that very closely. Although at this time we do not have the plans to offer a hyperscale appliance that is focused on the NVIDIA grade GPU space. However, you could essentially deliver that functionality to Atlantis USX. The other question I see here is about encryption. So, PD, do you want to say that?
Yeah. So data at rest encryption, we are working on providing a native data at rest encryption capability. That's part of our roadmap, a recent near-term roadmap. However, right now, we do offer data at rest encrypted solutions to our customers using USX. And the way we structure the solution is we leverage the underlying hardware data at rest encryption capability. We actually have verified encrypted solutions leveraging hardware vendors' capability with USX on top of that, that we've actually deployed in customers' environment already.
One question I see here is maybe PD for you is what efficiency do we normally see from the data reduction technology that we have?
Yeah, so that's a very common question, one we get a lot, right? It always depends. Of course, that's the answer, right? It always depends on the workload. However, on an average across our entire customer install base, we see about 70% efficiency in data reduction efficiency. And that was really the reason why when we introduced hyperscale, we said, okay, we'll give guaranteed efficiency and data reduction of 70%. Bear in mind that depending on workload, so if you're using a VDI workload, we are super efficient, and with our 4K block sizes, we have seen efficiencies that are over 90%. With SQL databases, we see efficiencies north of 70%. So it's a mixture. Of course, you have things like video images and all that that's already compressed, or if you're doing encryption at a host level and sending encrypted data our way, you can't expect any efficiency in those cases. But on an average, about 70%.
Great. All right, that's all the questions we have for today. So I'm going to now turn it over back to Natalie. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. Check your email in the next few days for a copy of the recording.